Good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you may be. Thanks for watching this transmission. It is I, Mike Martins. And somebody asked me the other day in the comment section, Mike, why are you so interested in Australian real estate? Why not? I've been talking about this for years about Australia. Sydney housing prices are overvalued by 50%. Now, let me tell you why. Oh, no, I'm going to save that for a little bit until I get to the cash story here. Guys, you have no idea what this impact is so bad. I've been preaching this for years. Oh, you didn't buy it at the right time. No, because you can't sell the damn thing because no one can afford the damn thing. You're enslaved, and then creditors will chase you for the rest of your life, haunting you forever. That's why I left the big city and bought something with a ton of land and 10 bedrooms and 7 baths for $260,000. But that's another discussion for another time. Watch my Living the Dream series is another discussion for another time. I want to talk about, someone asked me, and it's a good question, because Australia this is a global thing. I've been talking about the Vancouver housing. I made a video yesterday about Vancouver. I did one the other day about Seattle. I did another one about New Zealand. This is a global thing, people. This is a very global thing that's happening. This is a global crisis. And every English-speaking country has been bought out because of their free markets. People come in, park their money, investors from all over. U.S. has investors from China and Russia, where New Zealand is mainly China, Australia is mainly China. So other countries have different investors from different parts of the world. Parts of, the UK is from India, and then parts of Europe is from Pakistan. So it depends where you're from, okay? So it depends where specific people immigrate to, right? So Sydney house prices overvalued by 50%. See, I've been talking about showing you guys, I've done segments of shows showing you guys what you could buy in North Carolina, what you could buy in Miami, what you could buy in West Palm Beach, what you could buy in decent areas in Atlanta for $250,000 with a pool. And then in comparison to a $1.4 million shack in Sydney. Oh, Mike, location. If you're going to enslave yourself for $1.4 million and you could have that, you have that money to spend, I would buy something in South Carolina. I'd buy something in Central Florida with a nice piece of land, and if I have that much money, then I could just retire or buy a place for $150,000. But people don't understand that. You know, they keep thinking it's location, my job. Your job is your shackles to your mortgage. Anyways, I want to get to what I wanted to say. Australian broker, Sydney house prices overvalued by 50 points. Yes, they are. House prices in Sydney are overvalued for as much as 50% according to the new data released by The Economist. However, property markets around the world are reaching a turning point with house price inflation down 1.5% compared to 12 months ago. Right? Why? Because the capital restriction outflow money leaving China has been stopped. All the dirty money, the casino laundering, all the crap that's been happening has stopped. The data released by The Economist as part of its first cities housing price index ranks Sydney 7th of 22 global cities, with house and apartment prices up 64% over the last 10 years. As much as 50% of the increase occurred over the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, things started going sideways in China, and a lot of people started moving their money out, and this caused this massive problem. In its calculations, The Economist has compared prices with medium household incomes. If prices rise faster in the long run than earnings, as they have done in Sydney, they may be unsustainable and therefore overvalued. The findings place Sydney alongside Vancouver, where housing is overvalued by 65%. Ooh, delusional Mike. London, where they are 59% over. Well, London's dropped a bit. It was actually 62%, but prices in London have been bottoming out right now for the last 10 months straight. And Amsterdam and Copenhagen, which are both overvalued by 50 points. And that's a lot of Russian money going into Amsterdam and Copenhagen. There's a lot of Russian money going there. Looking at its key global trends, the index also found that the average house price inflation has slowed by 1.5%, down 6.2% 12 months ago to 4.7% currently. The average price of a home in measured cities increased by 34% in real terms over the last 5 years in some overvalued markets, including Auckland, which I mention every week on my Trends in the Housing Market, London, which I mentioned, Sydney, which I mentioned, Toronto, which I mentioned. House prices have begun to fall, albeit slowly. Cities considered of fair value undervalued include Tokyo, Milan, Singapore, and New York. The findings, I could tell you lots of cities that are undervalued. Atlanta, Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, Gainesville is way undervalued. Albuquerque. There's a lot of cities that I could tell you that are severely undervalued where you can still pick up lots of parts in Texas. The finding cited 3 primary reasons for the trend. People are leaving cities or no longer arriving in droves as they've been priced out of the market. Exactly. Mass exodus. What have I been talking about the last 7 years? 7. Housing prices have been supported by a failure of governments to expand supply in many cities. No, that's wrong. Empty homes. You know how many empty homes are in Sydney? Comment below, I want to know. Because San Diego's got 40,000 empty homes in San Diego. LA County, like 98,000 empty homes. Toronto, 99,000 empty homes. Vancouver, I think it's 66,000 empty units. It's not supply, it's empty units. That's destroying the fabric of the housing market and making this trend go wonky. Where people say, Mike, there's been housing crashes before. What are you talking about? This is different. This is different. This is not your typical housing crash, people. This is something that we have not prepared for. This is something that the whole markets are skewed in the housing markets. And low interest rates and driving the stock markets and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot more going on. Gold is undervalued. Oil is undervalued. There's lots going on. I get it. There's lots of other markets we need to look at, but I'm just talking about the housing market. Why? Because the average guy that goes to work doesn't care about what's happening with oil, doesn't care about what the price of gold is. He just wants to pay down his house and not be a slave. Financial has made mortgages extremely cheap and has supercharged prices, the hot air blowing into these bubbles, and then you got a lot of baby boomers buying second and third properties, and that's what's crippling the markets. Cash confessions. How a Sydney mom spends her $170,000 income. She makes $170,000 large per year, but even with the addition of husband's income, the mom of 2 says it's not enough. And I'm going to tell you why it's not enough. And she's right. And I'll tell you why. I'll back her on this. 1975. In 1975, the average house in today's inflation, adjusted to today's inflation, in the city of Sydney would be $236,000. I'm going to say that one more time. In 1975, adjusted to today's inflation, what the average home was in Sydney in 1975, in today would be $230,000 to $265,000 ballpark. Today. So that's what the average house should be worth. Because adjusted to inflation from back in the day. Now, it's so overvalued with the cheap rates and the easing and the lowering rates and putting money into the system and giving out free money, pay it back at 0 interest rate mortgage and all that crap. It's fueled the market so much. Boomers, millennials, it all adds up in some sort of a mathematical strategic plan that this huge thing that's going on here. If you put it together, it's a mess. But the average house from 1975 in Sydney is about, adjusted to today's inflation, would be $265,000. High, like on the high end. But it's not. It's like $1.2 million. That's the problem we're having today. And this lady says Sydney's West earns an income well above Australian average. She makes 170,000 large a year, and coupled husband pair bring in 300 large. But the 47-year-old mother of two says it's not enough. It's not. People don't understand how out of reach we are with everything. Stimulus packages. This global thing is so big. You guys have no idea how it's going to affect every human being. It's such a big deal. So, take what I said. So, houses went up a lot more than they're valued. Now, what's going to happen in the next 6 months, a lot of people are going to be, especially the interest-only mortgages, they haven't paid anything down on them. Once they come up for renewal, I just hope God's with them. I hope they believe in a God. That's how bad it's going to get. And tons of people are not going to be wanting to pay for something worth less than what they bought it for. And that's what's happening right now. And I've been talking about this for years. And I wonder where all those commenters, people that commented and called me, all the names they called me and everything they said about, you know, not understanding Australia and this. Numbers don't lie. I don't care where you are in the world. The average house should be anywhere from $300,000 to $475,000. Why? Because that's what your average pay is adjusted to afford. That's why. So, but you look at, yeah, Mike, but 1975, you know, no. In 1975, you could pay your house off in 5-6 years working minimum wage. You can. Things were a lot different at 12% or 14% interest rates at the time. So people need to come to grips that not only is this a mess, like, I mean a mess, and I feel sorry for whoever is in power that has to clean this up, and the next administration that comes into power. It's a nightmare. Sydney is one of the world's most overvalued cities for housing, new data shows. Guys, I keep telling. I read this article actually a few weeks back on trends in the housing market. Don't forget to join me Wednesday, 7 p.m. 6:30 p.m. Western Seaboard time, LA time, Portland, Oregon time, Vancouver time. Don't forget to join me. 6:30 p.m. That's like 4 or 5 p.m. Thursday in Australia. Why luxury homes are dud investments. Oh yeah. A trap for investors to get into luxury housing on the assumption it outperforms mass market bricks and mortars. Nothing could be further from the truth. Rental demand spike. Tenants are fleeing Sydney for Brisbane. Yeah, if you are renting, you are free to go where you want. And free to get... listen to this, guys. An estimated 9,886 rentals are sitting vacant in Brisbane, compared to nearly 20,000 in Sydney. Despite the vacancy rates tightening, rents in Brisbane are holding firm, with surplus stock being absorbed by rising demand, easing concerns about the inner city's apartment oversupply. The asking rent for a Queensland rose 0.1% in July to $450 a week, while unit rents held steady at $370. Okay, so $452 a week. So you got to be making at least $240 a day to cover your nut, and that's talking about rent, food, transportation costs, entertainment. And if you're not entertaining yourself, you're living a boring life. You're living in slavery too if you're not. So you need about $265 a day to cover everything. That's your rent. That's everything. So nervous home sellers drive REA's growth as house prices fall. Oh yeah. I'll leave this with you guys to read. The party's over for Australia's $5.6 trillion housing frenzy. Is Australia's national debt even $5.6 trillion? So guys, this is why I'm bringing up Australia. It's a big deal, and I think Australia is going to be the domino that falls first. And then I think it's going to go around New Zealand, which prices are dropping, up to the UK, to Canada, and down to the US. Party's over. This is an older article, but it's coming to fruition this week. Party's over for Australia's $5.6 trillion housing frenzy. The greedy little nation that sold its soul for house prices. There was a time when Australia's housing bubble was not much more than a curiosity. Contained mostly to Sydney, it seemed it would pass with a little pop and be forgotten. Then there was a time when the bubble went national, and suddenly the little pop was going to be a big pop. So monetary and physical policy began to distort in support of it. Politicians, bank lending practices. Next, there was time when the moral hazard became so great that the bubble grew to engulf all policy and media and marginalizing an entire generation from homeownership. I said, your kids and grandkids are bought out. Finished. Politicians routinely lied to cover the collapse in evidence-based policy making. Finally, we come today, when notions of managing the macroeconomic levers of an economy now boil down to just one thing: low interest rates to prevent the housing bubble from bursting, physical repair to prevent the bubble bursting, and mass immigration to prevent the bubble bursting, even though it is crushing living standards and gutting wages. Guys, you know, a lot of people, that's your answer to why I'm covering Sydney and Australia. It's major. And every human being in that country will be affected by this, whether they're homeless, because it will affect them because they're homeless, and there's a reason why they're homeless, whether they're renting, and there's a reason why they're renting or not buying, or waiting, people waiting on the sidelines, people frantic to sell, people frantic to flee or take off for, you know, frauds and stuff being, a lot of frauds going to come to fruition, lots of garbage on the books and banks, lots of just a lot of disappointments. Anyways, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. This is I wanted to answer that question. Why am I talking about Australian housing market? And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because it's a big, big deal. Share this and get this out. Don't forget to join me in Trends in the Housing Market, guys. Every Wednesday, my time, 6 p.m. Pacific time, I go live. If you want to be 6:30 p.m. Sorry, Pacific, Western. Yeah, Pacific time. Yeah, it's Pacific, not Atlantic. Sorry, Pacific time. Yeah. If you want to be on the show, please email me on my Facebook page, fan page. It auto responds in Portuguese. Don't panic. I am very well known in the Portuguese speaking world. So do me a favor, message me and let me know if you want to be on the show. I would like to have some boots on the ground in Australia, especially in Sydney and in Melbourne. I'd like someone to come on the show too, from Perth, so we could discuss what's happening with the whole mining situation and how it has never recovered since then, since the mining bust. I'd like to get some, and if you're in New Zealand, I want to talk to you too. I want to know people sleeping in cars, what's happening there, 40 people to a house. Meth testing homes, people being put up in hotels, people renting out their backyards for tent space for people to sleep in tents, people renting out a bunk in their house so people can sleep in a bunk. It's crazy. If you're in California, I'd like to hear from you too. If you're in Vancouver, I'd like to hear from you too. If you're in Toronto, I'd like to hear from you anywhere in the world where the housing crisis is becoming a burden on your life. It's holding you back from getting married. It's holding you back from having kids. It's holding you back from getting into relationships. It's breaking up your relationships. It's destroying your marriage. It's stopping you from getting a job. It's stopping you from taking or getting fired from or losing a job because you can't afford to live in that city anymore. It's affecting every human being. And if you're homeless, there's a very good chance it's because of this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Share me, get me out there. I appreciate it. Love you guys so much. Big hug. Thanks for watching.